Welcome to Prelude Chat with your Anchorage Symphony Orchestra. I'm Susan Wingrove-Reed, the education consultant and principal keyboard player, and with me is Elizabeth Schulze, our amazing music director. And we're going to talk a bit about the grand finale concert in April for the 24-25th season of the Anchorage Symphony Orchestra. And wow, what a program. Elizabeth, holy cow. So, opening...
You're scaring me now, Susan.
No, it's just wonderful music. And in fact, the opening piece, Lumina, I got to hear the New York Phil play it several years ago.
Oh, for goodness sake.
I fell in love with the music right away.
Yeah, she's special.
So why don't you share with us some of your thoughts about why you picked this particular piece for our finale opener?
Well, whenever I program, I try, the basic piece, the big piece was the planets, because I have a relationship with the former, now just retired head of the Lowell Observatory, Dr. Jeffrey Hall. Wonderful musician, wonderful person, fabulous scientist. And he had put together visuals for the planets based on space planets rather than mythological gods. But that's what I wanted to, that was sort of going to be the big finale piece. And so what do you put with that? There's all kinds of possibilities. You can go completely in a different direction, have nothing to do with the planets, and just, do English music or do, whatever. But I was aware of Nina's piece, Lumina, and although it isn't about space, it is about light. And it's about shadow and the contrast between dark and light. And I thought, well, it's a very human experience. It's how we see, and we're going to be seeing the planets in a visual way as well. And here is another piece that describes something that normally we would experience in a visual way. And yet she is able to create, as she calls, clouds of sound with these piercing notes that sort of are like light piercing through darkness. And it's a dramatic piece. It's a beautiful piece. She writes exquisitely for the orchestra. She's a master, actually. I really think she's one of the outstanding young composers of her generation. And I just thought, what I also loved is that she brings in, she is of Indian heritage, and although grew up I believe in the Detroit area.
Yes.
But her parents, I think, maybe immigrated from India at some point, someone somewhere. And she brings in some kind of Hindustani musical ornamentation to the musical line, which I thought was very attractive and, again, sort of self-identifying, but at the same time perfectly fitting in kind of what we would think of as clouds of sound and these melodies that sort of create clarity and continuity and light. So it's playing on a lot of different things. It's not just light and dark and all of that. She said that she wrote it before the pandemic, but that when the pandemic happened, the piece took on new meaning. Not only for the people that were performing it, but also for herself, in that going through the pandemic was a dark time and hope was sort of the light. And that's generalizing what she said. But I mean, at some point, it's interesting to see how the meaning of a piece can change because of the times, even in a matter of just a few years, where the interpretation can actually change. So that was another piece that I immediately thought, oh, this would be a great companion. And then what other kind of light? Well, of course, Debussy's Moonlight.
Oh, yes.
Now, of course, we know that it wasn't quite named that when he first wrote it, but and it might refer, in fact, to a walk in some area, beautiful area where breezes are going and the sun is setting, but he renamed it Moonlight.
Yes.
And it really does. I mean, for most of us, it evokes a sense of quiet and calm. And the way we might feel on a moonlit night. So I thought that was a nice pairing with her very dramatic, contrasting piece. This instead is in one affect, although it has different melodies and ebbs and flows. It's mostly, one mood.
And it's something almost everyone has heard before.
Exactly right.
Either
Yes.
played it or heard it, since it's
Yes.
such a famous piano solo.
Absolutely.
But this is a wonderful orchestration by Arthur Luck.
It's one of his very best.
Yes.
And it is standard, and many orchestras have played it. When I looked at our parts, they look like they are about 70 years old.
Yes.
They've been with the orchestra for many years, clearly, because they're yellowed pages,
Yeah.
and I'm like afraid to turn because they might crumble in my hands. But I love it, and yes, I did want to bring some familiarity. Certainly, people will have heard many of the individual planets.
Yes.
Either in excerpts or
Movies
the whole thing,
or all
or-
kinds
yeah.
of things, yeah.
But anyway, the Debussy, it's wonderful, and it was also a wonderful contrast with her piece, and to see how far orchestration and well, not so much orchestration, but how far music has changed over the century since he wrote it. I think around 1903 or so.
Yeah, it's
so
over
she's
100
writing
years
it
ago.
120 years later. At the same time dealing with similar things. And then we have a world premiere by one of our own, one of the Anchorage Symphony's musicians, very talented young man who I've known since he was a young man, really young teenager, when he came to the Kennedy Center for the Summer Music Institute, and I was conducting and teaching at the time. So I met Brett Lindsay then and knew he was a very special musician and interesting person. And I saw him again when I took over the Flagstaff Symphony, and he was a cello student at Northern Arizona University and played in the orchestra. And so there he was again, that was only a few years later. And then to come up to Anchorage, and I remember when he came up to me and greeted me and was, it was a wonderful reunion to see him yet again in another part of his life and back at home where he grew up here. A few years ago, when we were coming out of COVID and we had our Kaleidoscope concerts, which featured smaller ensembles of the orchestra, and we performed one of his pieces that he had written for a string ensemble, which was quite beautiful. And when he wrote me in the fall of 2023, so that's last season, at the beginning of last season, he sent this piece along that he had written. Now, this was a huge jump from a piece for strings, which he knows very well because he's a fine cellist and has played in ensembles and knows, quartets and knows the stringed instrument sound and how to write for it. But now he had written a piece that was massive, calls for all the orchestra's members, which, I mean, in a way, he was very lucky to have experienced the Anchorage Symphony, which has always been so generous in terms of the opportunity to play large works, large-scale works. There has never been a stinting in that way where, we need to budget, so we can only do Beethoven or Baroque music this year because we can't afford it, whatever. We always have found a way to do the pieces that we want to do. And so he saw that, and he wrote for an orchestra that's even bigger than the Anchorage Symphony. So we pulled him back in just a little bit, not 10 percussionists, kind of said we have 5, so you'll figure that one out. And we haven't started rehearsing, we're about to. And I know that in the process of the next few rehearsals, things will change again. He'll hear something. He's a young composer. This is, I think, his first orchestral work. And this is a young man who has not formally been in a composition course.
Right.
This is someone who is basically self-taught in many ways. I mean, I don't know his whole musical background. He may have taken composition classes in college or something, but this is something that's coming later in his musical progress, which is just astonishing because I think he's innately talented and he has a beautiful capacity for melody and a great ear for harmony. This is a piece that is wide-ranging, as I said before. It has two big sections. One is more a song section, and the other is more a, what would you call it? A heroic, muscular. It's not really a march because it's in a 9-8 meter kind of time, but it just has this forward feeling and heroic feeling. It's very cinematic. It reminds me a lot of music by, say, John Powell or any of the, who wrote for How to Train Your Dragon and people like that. I mean, he has a great sense of these big, large structured pieces of music with big anthems that people can remember and sing again. And I think that's, that is where a lot of young musicians are going. They're going toward game music. They're going toward movie music. He is building his resume, and I think if he wanted, he could, move into that area very, very easily. But it's exciting for us to be able to provide a platform for a young talent like his, and it's a good piece. I think the audience will love it. So I'm very proud to be able to present our own very, very deeply talented musicians in many different ways, whether they're soloists or whether they're composers. And we'll be seeing more local composers as we program into future seasons as well. So again, just I think the audience will very much appreciate Brett's work. It's called Of Sunlight and Solace, and the first part is perhaps the sunlight, and the second part is the solace, which is very triumphant. So, whatever was troubling in the first, is overcome in the second in a glorious way. And I know that many of I'm trusting that the orchestra will be both enthusiastic about it and supportive, but also help in the making this score the best it can be in terms of what he had in mind, to realize it. And I suspect there'll be some little adjustments, as there always is in a world premiere. It's always like, I think I remember Billy Child's piece where he was coming up in dress rehearsal and saying, horns, lay out there and come in here, and, moving things around even up to the end, which is a little disconcerting, but we'll try to make that not happen at dress rehearsal this time.
That's a good goal.
Right. So, and then on the second half, Holst's Planets, which, is a favorite work of many people, certainly is of mine. Magnificently and masterfully orchestrated, full orchestra, but all at the same time being able, when it calls for it, like in Venus or Saturn or any of those that have very intimate, quiet moments and small ensemble writing. He just has, Holst is just a master of orchestration and a wonderful model for composers as well. But this was, he hit it out of the park when he wrote this one. He just had a lot of great melodies. I think one of them became a big famous hymn to Something I Vow. It became a hymn from the big theme from Jupiter, and it really resonates with the British soul of the mid 20th century, I think, or early 20th century. There was something that resonated. Very patriotic in a way. Each of the planets are actually, he calls them the planets, but he's basing it on the personalities of the Roman Greek gods.
And the astrological
signs. The astrological signs, absolutely, which was a big deal at the turn of the 20th century. I mean, you have spiritualism and astrology and all kinds of things that are trying to give meaning to people beyond religious platitudes. There's got to be what else in the universe is affecting my life. And so all of those things, the ancient truths and the planets, the spheres, anything outside of us are looked to as having power and mystery and attributes almost all of them are human attributes, but they're gods. So, and it's fun to juxtapose that with a visual presentation that has nothing to do with that,
Yes,
and has everything to do with the late 20th, early 21st century view of space. And Jeffrey Hall, is one of the world's most important scientists in the study of the sun, which I thought was very interesting. But he's also a magnificent musician. He plays organ extremely well and plays in his church every week, and music director of his church, but is an exquisite musician and knows the repertoire. And what I like about his presentation is he put the visuals together with a scientist's mind about how to teach and show people like all the moons of a planet. And it's not just the planet, but its whole system, all the rings and all of those kinds of things, so that it's, in some ways, people can come and feel like they've gone to an observatory presentation in some ways. But also, as a musician, he's made it so that it's our performance of a piece. In other words, he hasn't made us learn a click track, which we have to do for movies like the Harry Potter and the Bugs Bunny. We had to go with the film as it is. You have to hit all of those points, visual points, to get it right. But this time he works with us, and he has been able to adjust his visuals so that when we get to bar 7, that's when that image will come. So I really appreciated the musician's mind as well as the scientist's mind in terms of what we will see. The planets doesn't need the visual. This was just the idea of, and I really do believe it stands on its own without visuals. I just thought that this would be a fun collaboration, since I've done this with Dr. Hall a couple times, and it's always been received very well, and just a different take.
Right.
Yeah, I know that our audiences have seen similar productions with visual, and it kind of is something that happened, especially in the 90s. It probably happened before that, but in the 90s, the idea of pairing the planets with the NASA footage, because we were getting back Voyager footage of the planets in such an amazing way, and of course we know our dear friend Kurt Riemann has a. If you go to our Anchorage Art Museum, he has a display of his music that's accompanying footage from Mars. That is astonishing, and I would urge everyone to go see that.
That's going to be there for, I think, 17 months.
Yeah, it's astonishing.
There's plenty of time to spread the word. Right. Everybody needs to go see this.
Well, it's a perfect pairing with what we're doing, too, and a reminder, because he is a good friend of ours and is our archivist recording expert, and a good friend to all of us, and a wonderful musician and artist in his own right. And so it's wonderful to have that happening at the Art Museum as well as our finale. But in terms of performing the whole, it's a very virtuosic piece. This whole concert's very virtuosic for the orchestra, but we've arrived. I like to build, we start with a big piece in the beginning of the season and work through with all kinds of different exciting pieces and new vistas, and then we end again with a really massive tour de force for the orchestra, because we've worked so hard all year, and it's wonderful to sort of say, here we are, and here we are at our best, and here we are at our most complex and most grand, and I think this will be it. And the other thing I wanted to say about the whole is this wonderful collaboration with the chamber singers, the women of the chamber singers, who will join us. They will be singing from off stage as the spirit of Neptune, as I say, the what did I call them, the space maidens, or something like space maidens. They're singing from afar, but it's a wonderful opportunity to get back into having an ongoing relationship with our singing artists in our
fact,
community.
at rehearsal last night, I was working with the group, and the chamber singers, sopranos and altos, are being joined by about 20 high school singers from a number of local high schools. And so it's really been a fun process of integrating at the rehearsals. But I was saying, you guys, this is really special because this is the first time we've had voice like this since COVID.
It's right.
With our symphony, and so you are now paving the way for more to come.
Yes,
and
definitely more to come.
They got pretty
yes.
excited about that.
That's great. So. That's great. Well, I'm looking forward to being able to feature them as well, and the wonderful work of David Hagen and your work in helping them prepare. So it's going to be a really fun
concert.
Yeah.
And by the way, I was at West High School today working with the choirs, and some of the kids come to the symphony because they know me really well. And I brought up, there was a young woman, I actually treated her to a ticket because the Dvorak cello concerto at the last concert is one of her favorites.
Oh, wow.
And she came up to me after class and she said, I've already got tickets because I just love the planets. And me and a friend had got our tickets weeks ago. And
Perfect.
So, yay.
Well, I know that tickets are selling well, and we hope that even more people will make a decision to come down to the Atwood and hear a great concert.
Hear us for our finale concert for this season, and then next season is a very important landmark for our orchestra, our 80th anniversary season.
Yes.
And since we didn't get to celebrate the 75th because of COVID, this is a really big deal.
It is a big deal, and we have a big deal season ahead.
So more to come on that.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you in your seats in the concert hall, the Atwood Concert Hall, with your Anchorage Symphony for our grand finale. Thank you so much for supporting our orchestra.